So I was scrolling Twitter this morning and I came across this article that I want to share with everybody. I'll put a link in the description below because I'm not tech savvy. I'm doing this in my freaking bedroom. But that way you can follow along while I read. So it is on the World Socialist Web, which is wsws.org. It says media silent on dismissal of DNC suit against Julian Assange. The federal court ruling last Tuesday dismissing a Democratic National Committee civil suit against Julian Assange with prejudice was a devastating indictment of the U.S. ruling elite's campaign to destroy the WikiLeaks founder. It exposed as a fraud the entire Russiagate conspiracy theory peddled by the Democratic Party, the corporate media, and the intelligence agencies for the past 3 years. The decision by Judge John Koldel, I think is how you pronounce it, I don't know, of the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York rejected the smears that Assange colluded with Russia. It upheld his status as a journalist and publisher and dismissed claims that WikiLeaks' 2016 publication of leaked emails from the DNC was illegal. Despite the significance of the ruling and its clear newsworthiness, it has been subjected to almost complete blackout by the entire media in the U.S. and internationally. The universal silence on the court decision extending from the New York Times, which buried a 6-paragraph report on the ruling on page 25, and the Washington Post to alternative outlets such as The Intercept, the television evening news programs, and the publications of the pseudo-left can be described only as a coordinated political conspiracy. So it goes down here. Its aim is to suppress any discussion of the court's exposure of the slanders used to malign and isolate Assange and to justify the unprecedented international pursuit of him over WikiLeaks' exposure of U.S. war crimes, surveillance operations, and diplomatic conspiracies. The New York Times and Washington Post and other corporate outlets have relentlessly smeared Assange as a Russian agent. The Washington Post is also owned by Bezos. Remember that. He is not one of the good guys. Let's see here. And depicted him as the linchpin of a conspiracy hatched in Moscow to deprive Democratic Party candidate Hillary Clinton of the presidency in the 2016 elections. Now that their claims have been subjected to judicial review and exposed as a tissue of lies and fabrications, they have adopted a policy of radio silence. There is no question that if the court ruling had been in favor of the DNC, it would have been greeted with the banner headlines and wall-to-wall coverage. The response exposes these publications as state propagandists and active participants in the campaign by the Democratic Party, the Trump administration, and the entire ruling elite to condemn Assange for the rest of his life to an American prison for the crime of publishing the truth. The Democratic Party and the Trump administration. Why would they be working together? Because they're all corrupt, working for their donors. The editors and senior writers at these outlets, such as the New York Times editorial page, editor James Bennett, are in constant contact with the CIA and other intelligence agencies. Behind the scenes, they work out an editorial line that will advance the interests of the Wall Street banks and the military intelligence apparatus. At the same time, they decide what news and information they will hide from the American and world population. The efforts by the mainstream news outlets to bury the ruling presents a clear example of the type of media manipulation that has led millions of people to seek alternative news of sources of news on the internet, of which WikiLeaks is itself an example. So is this. Judge Koldel's decision made plain the anti-democratic and dictatorial logic of the DNC case against Assange. He warned, quote, "If WikiLeaks could be held liable for publishing documents concerning the DNC's political, financial, and voter engagement strategies simply because the DNC labels them secret and trade secrets, then so could any newspaper or other media outlet." End quote. This, he stated, would override the First Amendment protection to freedom of the press mandated by the U.S. Constitution. Koldl's finding was an absolute vindication of Assange and WikiLeaks' 2016 publications, exposing the attempts by the DNC to rig the Democratic Party primaries against self-declared Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders in favor of Hillary Clinton. I'm going to read that again. Judge Koldl's finding was an absolute vindication of Assange and WikiLeaks' 2016 publications exposing the attempts by the DNC to rig the Democratic Party primaries against self-declared Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders in favor of Hillary Clinton. So everybody that says it was a conspiracy theory, it's not true. Hell, Donna Brazile came out and admitted it. The judge found these releases, together with the publication of Clinton's secret speeches to Wall Street banks in which she pledged to be their representative, were matters of the highest public concern. They allowed the American electorate to look behind the curtain of one of the two major political parties in the United States during the presidential election. Koldl, moreover, found there was no evidence to justify the DNC's assertion that WikiLeaks had colluded with the Russian state. Found there was no evidence to justify the DNC's assertion that WikiLeaks had colluded with the Russian state to obtain the material. Assange and WikiLeaks have always maintained that the documents were not provided to them by the Putin regime. Okay, so it goes on to say the ruling demonstrated the flagrant illegality of the U.S. vendetta against Assange. The slander that he was operating as a Russian agent to interfere, in U.S. politics was used by the American government and its intelligence agencies to pressure the Ecuadorian regime to sever Assange's internet access in 2016 and again in 2018. It served as a central pretext for its illegal termination in April of his political asylum in the embassy building. The judgment was also an implicit exposure of the lawlessness of the attempts by the Trump administration, with the full support of Democrats, to extradite Assange from Britain so that he can be prosecuted in 18 charges, including 17 espionage counts, carrying a maximum of 175 years imprisonment for publishing something they don't like. The Trump administration and the Justice Department are claiming that it was illegal for WikiLeaks and Assange to publish U.S. Army war logs from U.S. and Afghanistan, hundreds of thousands of diplomatic cables, and other documents exposing U.S. war crimes and intrigues, provided by the courageous whistleblower Chelsea Manning. Koldl's ruling, however, reasserted the fundamental democratic principle that WikiLeaks had a right to publish the 2016 DNC documents, even if they had been obtained by the Russian government or any other entity illegally, because he's a publisher, and it's First Amendment rights. The clear implication is that even if Manning's decision to leak U.S. military and diplomatic documents was a violation of the law, WikiLeaks' publication of them was not. The publication of both the 2010 and the 2016 leaks was constitutionally protected journalistic activity. Coulter further undermined the claims of the Trump administration, the Democrats, and the media that Assange is a hacker, undeserving of First Amendment protections. The judge repeatedly referred to Assange as a journalist and WikiLeaks as a publisher. In other words, the attempt to extradite Assange to the U.S. to prosecute him is a frontal assault on the U.S. Constitution and press freedom. In its disregard for domestic and international law, it can be described only as an extraordinary rendition operation, similar to the kidnappings and torture operations conducted by the CIA. The hostile response to Coulter's ruling on the part of the entire political and media establishment in the U.S. and internationally demonstrates that this conspiracy will not be defeated by plaintive appeals to the governments, political parties, and media corporations that have spearheaded the assault on Assange's legal and democratic rights. All of them are using the persecution of Assange as a test case for the imposition of ever more authoritarian measures aimed at suppressing mounting popular hostility to war, social inequality, and an assault on democratic rights. So basically, they're threatening the First Amendment. What is required of the development of a mass movement from below to mobilize the immense social and political power of the working class internationally to secure Assange's liberty and to defend all democratic rights. To take forward this critical struggle, the WSWS and the International Committee of the Fourth International last month called for the formation of a global defense committee to free Assange and the courageous whistleblower Chelsea Manning. All workers, young people, and supporters of democratic rights should contact WSWS today. And again, I'll link this to the bottom of the video because I don't know how to do that on my own. So anyway, I thought that was big breaking news, and you will not hear it on CNN, MSNBC, probably, I would assume not on Fox either. You'll only find it on YouTube like this. Anybody looking for recommendations on where you can find shows to watch that support democratic socialism or Medicare for all, ideas like that, Julian Assange, my favorite are The Political Vigilante, which is Graham Elwood, and The Jimmy Dore Show. So, yeah, anyway. Hit the like button, share this, subscribe. Find me on Twitter at Backyard Politics with an X. And until next time, Medicare be with you.